Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest today has been working at the intersection of fitness, financing, female founders a little bit, and female health for the past 15 years. She's the founder and managing partner of Wellness Growth Ventures, and she serves as an advisor or a board member to at least 5 other companies. Her LinkedIn is stacked, so we always appreciate a go-getter. Welcome to the show, Rachel Hirsch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. And I feel like you're doing so many things. How do you introduce yourself when you meet somebody new?
Not well, quite frankly. Last night I was at an event where a very kind woman was introducing me, and I was like, wow, I should just hire you to constantly introduce me. It was so much more generous than how I introduce myself.
I'm so bad at introducing myself too. I don't know why, because you do it so many times. At some point you would think repetition would kick in and it would be easier, but it really is a very difficult exercise to do.
Yeah. It almost feels like, again, this has got to be a female thing, but like a brag. It's just like, I'm Rachel. That works swimmingly.
I love that. What are you working on right now? What's your core work world?
Okay, my core work world, it's funny, but this is like an Instagram versus reality question a little bit, but core work world is really Wellness Growth Ventures. So we're closing, which is really exciting. We're doing our first close end of Jan for the next fund. So been hustling there, trying to, build out our LP base, our limited partner base. And then nights and weekends, I'm at Empowered, which is our yoga studio, and enjoying it all.
It seems like you have pursued financing and funding aspect of your brain, and then you have this fitness aspect of your brain. And then you just Venn diagrammed them, and then you sit just squarely in between those two things, and you just play in all of those things. Is that how you think about your world, or do you think about it differently?
No, it's funny because I was speaking to a friend yesterday and I said, for so long, I felt like I had 2 very disparate lives. I used to wear my Toms and my, drink my kombucha on the way to the trading floor. And then I would walk in the door and I'd put my Louboutins on and my hair was slicked back. It was just 2 totally different lives. Part of the reason I went to business school is I wanted to be one person. I wanted to have one identity. And so navigating this path, it's arguably super niche and still emerging in a way. But now I feel like I am just one person. I love the math side. I love the financing side. But I'm a wellness fiend at the end of the day. I'm obsessive. And so I get to live in that perfect little overlap of my two circles.
It's such a great niche for you, and you just own it. You posted the other day on LinkedIn about something that you're doing through Wellness Growth Ventures called Fundraising 101. Talk to me about that. I feel like it's so needed. Where did this idea come from, and how is this coming to life?
So we see so many incredible founders of Wellness Growth Ventures. People send decks or, their ideas. We won't invest until, call it $3 million top line. But to get to that, you need help and support along the way. And time is the most valuable resource. And one of the more frustrating things I would say is I'll get a deck and I'm I want to dig in. I want to, be your advisor. I want to spend so much time with you. But I can't do that for as many of the people and brands as I would like to. So this came a little bit out of that of, okay, we have this knowledge that we've just learned through the years. It shouldn't be gatekept. But I think in a lot of ways it is. And especially, it's not something you learn in school. And if you don't have the network of people that you can tap to learn it. So incredible woman that I met through the fundraising process, I was just sort of saying this much to her. And she's like, well, we should do a class. Why don't we just do it? I was what a great idea. And it's all here. It's all in my brain and in her brain and in all of our brains. So it wasn't a heavy lift to create, but it's been iterations of presenting it to people and seeing does this make sense? Does this hit? What else do you need? What would be important? We're really excited. We just put it out into the universe that we were going to do this a week ago now, not even, I think earlier this week. And we already have so much interest, which is amazing. We feel really lucky. Leave it open until call it early Jan, and then we're just going to launch it and see how it goes. We'll keep iterating, and it's just meant to be helpful.
Give us a sneak peek on the course. What's one thing that entrepreneurs get just totally wrong about fundraising?
I don't even think it's wrong. I think it's so much jargon. You can't necessarily Google it. There's a lot of just institutional knowledge. And so going through everything from debt financing to equity financing to the hundreds of variations of that and the options that you have. We also have a whole list of grants and accelerator programs or pitch slams that you can do. That's like some of that's non-dilutive capital. We have all of these just pieces that I think are really helpful. We break down like a cap table and some of the just like the jargony pieces. We made this dictionary of jargon. I basically said to a few people, I was like, give me every word that you have heard that you're like, I don't know what this is. And I made a list of words and I just like threw out really simple definitions. And so just pieces like that to make it sort of simplified. And then on the other side of that, we'll have office hours where people can bring their pitch deck and we can sort of pick it apart, or we'll double tap into like very specific topics niche to them.
That's so cool. And it's so needed. We will all be following along your LinkedIn to get the latest and greatest news on that project. What are some of your goals going into 2025 with Wellness Growth Ventures, knowing that you just closed this big fund?
That's all relative, but thank you. We're just going to keep charting down the same path. I think what's beautiful is that it hasn't been this like 0 to 100. It's been like a step-by-step journey. We'll just keep charting down that path. There's so much that we want to do. And so we'll just keep building along the same way that we are.
It is big what you're doing. Don't downplay your success. You're doing big things and we're watching you. We see you. We're supporting you, cheering along the way. As you're like looking back at last year, at 2024, what are some of the stories or the brands that are like catching your eye in your look back?
Well, there are so many. I think one of the biggest learnings for me and for us at Wellness Growth Ventures was the resilience and agility of certain founders. So 2020, 2021, call it what was needed or what was even requested from investors or bankers or whatever it might have been from entrepreneurs was vastly different than this past year. The people who succeeded the most had the most agility. They had the most resilience. And when they were told no, they figured out, okay, well, it's a no for this specifically, but how can I maneuver to get that to be a yes? And there were so many incredible founders who did that. And those are the ones who had oversubscribed rounds. Those are the ones whose revenue has 3x while being profitable. Like there's so many of these incredible stories and what's a little bit of a Armageddon within the space we play in. But there are these superheroes that have figured it out. And so we've gotten better at identifying who those people are when we're looking at new founders who maybe haven't been through that cycle, how to identify that moving forward.
It seems like this past year, there was so much change.
Yeah.
But yet, if you look back at the last 3 years, like ever since COVID, it just seems like things have been moving and changing and evolving. And you have a business plan and you have a set of goals and it's working, but then something changes environmentally and you have to like pivot and you have to go in a different direction. And so I think it's great that you specifically call out resilience, because I think all of us have felt that need in this past year of just, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something different. Or, just being willing to let go of a vision that you had for what you're working on and go in a different direction. And I know you also think of resilience through a lens of like the female consumer, because you invest in a lot of companies that support female consumers. So have you seen trends this past year, like specifically regarding or relating to the female consumer?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'll get on my like little soapbox for a minute. People right now are so hesitant about the consumer space. They say that consumers are fickle and they're changing, and that people are going to buy less or they're going to trade down or whatever people are saying. And if you like look at who's actually saying that, it differs from person that they're actually talking about, but that's a different conversation. Women own 85+% of the purchasing power in consumer and healthcare. So we're already like the majority of the purchasing power. On top of that, so right now, women own, call it 9, 10, 11 trillion in assets. By 2030, women will own over 30 trillion of assets. And that's because of a variety of reasons, but the biggest one, arguably, the generational wealth transfer. If we already own 85+% of the purchasing power, and in 5 years are going to 3x our assets, of course I'm going to bet on us every single time. I think what's really interesting is the lack of interest in the space because of old sort of dynamics maybe, or old theses that I don't think exist anymore to the same degree. I don't think women are trading down on their makeup. I don't think women are trading down on their fragrance. I don't think women are trading down on supplements. And to some degree, sure, but I think there is resilience and stickiness within the female consumer that is totally undervalued right now.
We're sitting in 2 years removed from the Barbie movie, currently at the end of the Eras tour, and just like dollars being spent on all of the tickets, all of the merchandise. And it's not just like one purchase and done. It's like we're following along with this. We're buying every part of this makeup line. It like you name
Yes.
it, whatever it is. It's commitment to brand, which of course I
Yes.
love, where it's not just we're committing to a product and we like a product, but we're like committing to the brand. We're committing to the person who runs the brand. We're
Yes.
wearing the merchandise of the
Yes.
brand. We're walking around as micro influencers
Right.
for the brands.
Yes.
It's just a fascinating time to be in this space.
The crux of it for me is yet again underestimating women, thinking that, oh yeah, like they'll just go here or there and everywhere. I understand like where that mentality is coming from, but it's just they're underestimating us and underestimating how much we value connecting with a female founder when she comes on TikTok or Instagram and tells more about her story. Like there is a personal relationship that comes from that, even if it is digital. And I mean, you think of any reality television show, women love that. And there is a personal connection that happens, whether it's tangible or not. And I think that applies here as well. And that's what's being underestimated.
Are there brands that you think or founders that you think are doing a good job in servicing that customer and connecting with that customer?
Katie at Belly Welly, I shout out to her every time. She does such an incredible job. She is so real and authentic. She just like has a conversation with you, and she's actually the one doing it. She is the founder and CEO of this company that is thriving, that has investment from really big firms, and she is going to Walmart and like showing you herself on this TikTok, and she's telling you about her story, or she's meeting customers and telling them about her story. And I think that's part of the success of Belly Welly is Katie. Sure, it's scaled for a variety of reasons, but that real connection and her true honesty from day zero with it, I think is remarkable and something that we can point to as part of their success.
She's huge on TikTok. Like she's just one of those people who's like, where you talk about like founders who have personal brands or founders who
Yes.
are leading the marketing for their organizations. Like her name always comes up as one of the examples of that. So I love that. And I think it's just easy reach for brands, like to have a person who's willing to and good at being out in front of the brand and just personifying it a little bit more and just sharing a different perspective on the brand. There's certain things you're able to say from your brand voice, and then there's other things that you could say from your founder voice. It just makes so much sense to have all of that on the table and working together. Are there trends that you're watching heading into 2025 or brands or founders that you're watching heading into 2025 that you want to shout out?
From a trend perspective, I think there is so much intrigue for us, at least in terms of the secondary and beyond markets of GLP-1s. I know I've written about this a fair bit on LinkedIn, but I think it's far more prolific than people appreciate and going to be far more prolific. What happens as a side effect of that is potentially like super interesting to invest in. So for example, think of cardio. Cardio is actually for someone on GLP-1s might be challenging for them to continue to engage with, but something like Pilates or weight training is plausibly really helpful for them from a muscle mass perspective, from a bone density perspective. And so as we continue to see the longevity of use of GLP-1s, I think those secondary and beyond markets get really interesting. I think Ensure is going to sue me at some point because I keep saying this, but remember those like Ensure shake weight loss shakes that existed and people poo-pooed them and so valid because there was no like macro or micronutrients in them. There's probably no like real ingredients in them. I really believe there's going to be an insurgence of that type of like full-on meal because as people are less hungry, sure, they might still want their Chick-fil-A or whatever it might be, but they won't have as much of an appetite. So the idea of like true food as medicine and real ingredients in this food to like meet their dietary needs, I think we're going to see that. And so again, it's not like the actual GLP-1s that I'm super interested in, it's what happens beyond that. And I don't think we've really scratched the surface of what those needs are. Sure, we're talking about muscle mass and bone density and the amount of caloric intake that people are actually going to be able to eat, but I think it's going to go far beyond that, and it will be super interesting to participate in those categories.
I even think about fashion and clothes, like the spending that's in clothing is going to go up because of all of the people who are getting onto the weight loss medication. When you're in your most confident self, I'm proud of where I am and I'm confident with where I am, and I want to go shopping and I want to buy new clothes. So I totally agree with you that there's going to be a trickle down that ends up fueling a lot of consumer spending across a lot of categories, largely driven, again, by female consumers,
Right.
of course. Are there specific parts of the wellness sector that you're looking at that you believe have a big opportunity going into the new year?
Yeah, I think hormone care broadly is still hyper underserved. And within that, you can dig into a variety of places. So you can pick like menopause. Every single woman in this world goes through menopause. There are certain things that not every woman goes through, like childbirth, but every single woman is going to go through menopause. And there are really zero great solutions at this point, or efficacious supportive pieces for you. So that's an interesting one. But I think like the broad spectrum of that is really interesting. The young girls are getting their periods earlier and earlier. What does that mean for fertility and timeline of fertility? What does that mean for time for menopause and all of that? So I think there's a lot of interest there right now, and that has historically really been underserved by traditional healthcare. For the first time ever this year, Big Pharma came out with something to support postpartum. I mean, it is 2024 and it's the first time, but fine, like we'll take it. I think that just shows the mass interest and finally appreciation for women are half the population, play that across the board to some degree. By 2030, the NIH, so 5 years, estimates that half the female population will be in menopause. So, like, there's just so much here to unpack. And I think a lot of innovation will hopefully be coming down the pipeline.
Well, thank you for watching the space and supporting the space like you do, because I think there's a lot of different niches that people play in, with their venture groups. And I think like you just have such a clear vision of the type of company that you're trying to support and the type of founder that you're trying to support. I see nothing but positive things for you and your new fund in 2025. I want to kind of switch to you because you have like such an interesting background and you're involved in so many different things. How do you balance your time between all of the different projects that you're involved in?
Not well. I always joke I'm not much of a sleeper. When people ask what my hobbies are, my work are my hobbies. And I've chose them really intentionally because I'm happy to stay up until the wee hours, like problem solving with a founder, because that's my play. That's my fun. Yeah, I think it just depends. I'm not having children. I've never wanted children. So for me, these are my babies in a lot of ways. And I'm lucky that I can spend my time freely with that because I don't have a lot of other things that I need to devote my time to. I think it's all like, I view it as fun and play. I don't view it as, oh, shucks, I have to go to work. And so because of that, I can make time. I feel like I truly can make time.
So you talked earlier about like having these two different versions of yourself, like your like UGG wearing, kombucha drinking self and your work self. And you talked about really merging them together and having that overlap. How long ago was that where you kind of realized and made that overlap?
I realized it. That was like the impetus for me going to business school, which was a little over 5 years ago now. And I think during business school, I still really struggled with that. It was like, I love my finance side. I view things through that lens, and I was struggling to like merge the two still. And it's funny, during business school, I went to India for a month. Like I was still teaching yoga on the side, and I tried to teach yoga at business school, and I did one time. It was just like this weird, I was like testing and trying it out, and I just didn't have a clear path. There wasn't, when I was younger and I wanted to be a banker, like that's such a clear path to follow. I can follow in someone's footsteps. This, I was really carving my own way, and there were a lot of mistakes. But I think you actually saw where the crux of it was when I was at Expo. That was when I took that job because I wanted to really merge the two. I wanted wellness and finance to be one thing. That wasn't the right fit for me. That was like the crux of my exploration of being, okay, so like this is what a corporate job within wellness could plausibly look like. But I wanted something more specific. I needed something more specific. I missed like the investing side. I missed the grindy side of things.
I know you're working on this like fundraising 101 effort, but I feel like you could also do a purpose-driven life kind of 101 also, because I feel like there's so many people who have had moments like that, or maybe are sitting in a moment that's like that. Do you ever like mentor people, or like when someone comes to you and asks, I can't find my way, or like I can't find my thing, like what do you tell them to do?
I recently said to someone, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You should not trust me as your mentor. I barely trust myself. I've had so many incredible mentors along my journey, and so many of them from like my first days on Wall Street are still super active in my life and huge pillars of who I am. I would be honored to be that for someone else. But listen, I think we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. I don't think anyone has the answers. My parents very graciously have always supported my wild dreams. And so for whatever reason, I will keep chasing them, whether conventional or not.
I love that. If you weren't working in this intersection of finance and fitness and wellness, what would you be doing?
I think I'd be doing exactly what I'm doing. And that's what's sort of crazy is there are so many hard days, and there have been recently like hard weeks. I'm a crier. I've learned recently, like I have a lot of feelings. If I had all the money in the world, I would still be doing what I'm doing. I don't have all the money in the world, for the record, but I choose this every day because I love it. I love every inch of it.
And how long ago did you get to that place?
Listen, I think it's still a battle. I think what's really hard is I got a survey recently from business school of like how much my peers are making and like where they are in their careers. And that's a huge ego blow to me because I'm building right now, I'm grinding right now. And so I'm not at all in their position. So I think every day is a little bit of like, am I totally delusional? Am I making the right choices? I do come back to if I had all the money in the world, like this is absolutely what I'd be doing because I love it. And quite frankly, I think I'm good at it. And so I'm going to give myself a little bit more leeway to keep going, charting down that path and towing the line of delusion and reality.
You have to. You have to be a little bit delusional to make any of this come to life. And you're not just making things come to life. You're kind of working on both ends of it too, like getting people to come in as investors and then, being the advisor and being the investor to these companies that you're hand selecting and working with their founders really hands on. So it's like you have two directions that you're being pulled almost at all times. As you look back at 2024 or even more broadly, like what are you most proud of in your career or in your journey so far?
This was the one question you sent that I was like, I hope she doesn't ask this.
You can't dodge it, Rachel.
One of my toxic traits, I will admit, is that I'm not good at feeling pride. I'm not good at feeling proud. I'm not good at taking a step back. Listen, I am proud to be a small part of so many of these female founders who are really charting their own path. They literally inspire me every day. Like I so often find myself shooting them messages being like, thank you for doing what you're doing because you've made such an impact on me. And it's like a slightly weird message coming from an investor, but like it's real. I feel so lucky, grateful, proud to be like a small piece of that journey. I feel, really grateful and proud to have two incredibly brilliant communities of students and teachers at Empowered. It's like that own living, breathing thing. And every time I walk in, it's just this moment of connection that I feel so proud and grateful to be a part of. I feel proud that I'm taking some sort of risk that's like not natural to me.
How would you define your superpowers?
I see the good in people. And I believe in their good. Sometimes I think it's so hard and so lonely to be a founder. And I think it's easy to lose sight of the light. And I think one of my superpowers is I always, maybe not with myself, but I always see the light with other people and what they're building, what they're doing. I see their superpowers so clearly that I'm able to remind them of that. And I think that's really important. I think there's some investors who need to be the grounding force, the hard push. I think those are great investors and they're my perfect balance. But I'm the investor that is, when they're having a hard day and want to throw the towel in, that's like, oh no, let's grab this towel together. We're going. Seeing the best in people and believing the best in people definitely gets me burned sometimes, but I'd rather go through life believing that everyone is really doing the best they can than any other way.
As you look back, is there a moment where you were on a low and you were kind of like in this setback moment? And did you have a comeback season? And like, how did you work through your setback to get into a comeback season?
I feel like I'm in a setback all the time. I think that's part of being a entrepreneur is like everything is to some degree a setback. And it's just this beautiful puzzle at all times of problem solving and reframing your perspective of, again, like this was a no, or this is, not push, this door isn't opening, but like, is there a window open? Is there a way I can get to that window? Like, how do I maneuver my way over there? I think so often when I'll chart out a path that I want to go down, it rarely ends up being that path, but sometimes you have to take time to reflect and be introspective and say, okay, like that didn't work. What could work? And sometimes those are really low lows. And sometimes those can last more than a few hours. They can last days or weeks. And that's okay. As long as you use that time to, I'm going to sit with it. And I'm also going to find my window. I'm still finding windows.
As you're heading into 2025, are there any personal or professional goals that you have that you want to share?
I've never felt like I've bet on myself, even part of as being an investor, like I'm betting on other people, like quite literally betting on other people to execute and do the job. 2025 is when I start really betting on myself. And I have all these ideas and dreams that I think I've sort of kept hidden because they feel vulnerable in a way. And 2025, I'm betting on myself.
Is there a specific dream that you want to share that maybe somebody who's listening can help you bring to life?
I just want to put myself out there more as this intersection of, call it wealth and wellness or finance and fitness, whether that is through my own means and not just, I write a lot on LinkedIn or I'll like post a bit on Instagram, but I think there is more to be done in terms of identifying myself that way and finding paths forward. So still in the ideation phase, but you'll be the first to know, I promise, because I'm sure I'll have a lot of asks.
I end up following along. Do you feel pressure to be a female founder or to be like very forward as a female founder to like trailblaze in a way, or do you not like associate with that feeling?
That's so kind. And no, I don't. I feel like all of these trailblazers around me inspire me to keep pushing forward and finding new pieces of my puzzle, but I don't need to add any other pressure.
Well, to me, you bring a lot of trailblazer energy to the table. So I appreciate you sharing everything that you do share online. We covered a ton of topics today. Is there anything that is top of mind with you that we did not cover?
I think we hit it all. There's so much. We'll have to double tap into more of it at some point, but yeah, we hit all the good pieces.
We will come back and we'll do a round two, maybe when your fund is closed and spent, and we can do like a debrief of what it went toward. Thank you for sharing everything that you shared. You are trailblazing in the space and you are playing in a niche that's so important to all of us. And so thank you for everything that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. And thank you for being on this week's episode of the Society Pod.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.